It's hard to follow that. I appreciate the words from Paul Brown and everybody else that's been out here today. One of these things that sticks in my mind every time I come down here. Let's take the camera and focus on these columns over here. See these massive columns in front of the Federal Reserve Building? You see what they're holding up? They're holding up air. They're holding up that thing which they print money from. That's the symbolism that you have out here in front of the Federal Reserve. If you look at our money, it's full of symbols, and every one of them means something. Well, that's what these mean out here. They know what they're doing in there. It's nothing but a scam. It's the biggest scam in the history of mankind, as a matter of fact. Has anyone ever asked themselves why the American government, the most powerful government on the face of the planet, the world's last superpower, has to borrow to pay its bills? Has anyone ever stopped to ask that question? Why does the government ever have to borrow to pay its bills? That's because our government is not sovereign. That's why we have to borrow to pay our bills. Listen, I'm going to read a quote from one of my favorite founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson said, if the American people allow private banks to control the issuance of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of their property, that's us, until their children will wind up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thomas Jefferson understood this because 10 years before the First Continental Congress was the Currency Act of 1764. The Currency Act of 1764 was when the British Parliament impressed upon the colonists that they could only use currency issued by the Bank of England at interest payable back to the Bank of England. So after 10 years of that policy, our founders knew this isn't working out. Now, we've been dealing with this same policy for over 100 years, where our currency is issued at interest to the people. Well, think about the mathematics of all of that. If the money is issued at interest, then but they don't issue the interest, then where are you going to get the interest from to pay it back? Of course you can't. There is no way to pay the interest if they don't give you the money to pay the interest. So here it is, after 100 years of operation of this system, we have $42 trillion of debt, personal debt, for the American people. That's everyone here, and everyone across America owes $42 trillion. Plus our federal government owes $18 trillion, a total of $60 trillion of money that has been borrowed into existence and has got to be paid back. But look, here's a secret that no one will tell you. There's only $11 trillion in circulation. Where are we going to get the money to pay it back? Obviously, we have a mathematical problem. There's not enough money in circulation to even pay back what is owed. Well, look, all of that $42 trillion was borrowed into existence. Where did it go? If there's only 11 left, obviously there's a hole in this system. This is where our Federal Reserve member banks have become too big to fail, because the difference went to them. Now, Dr. Brown a few minutes ago was talking about 95% of the value of our currency is no longer in our currency. Where did it go? They want you to believe that inflation is a normal thing, and if they have a 2% inflation target, then that's perfectly normal. No. What they're planning on doing is taking 2% of the value of your money, because that doesn't just go into the air. No, it goes into the pockets of the private banks who own the Federal Reserve. Inflation is not a natural event. Inflation is theft. Inflation is a wealth transfer system. It's a wealth transfer protocol. You've heard about file transfer protocols, where if you want to get this file from here to there, well, this is a wealth transfer protocol. That's all this is, and it's stealing the wealth of the American people. And as long as this bank is in business, there is no way that the American people are going to end up anything other than a nation completely encumbered in debt. The money supply itself is debt. As soon as you pick up a dollar, realize it's losing value in your hands. That's because the interest is being removed. It's all in the mathematics of the system. So here, we're looking for an answer to this. Think about this. All of the interest on all of the money that's in circulation is going to private bankers. Just imagine if you just flip the switch, flip it this way. Look, it's going to private bankers this way. Let's flip it. It goes back to the people. All you got to do is the money supply needs to be owned by the American people, not by the private bankers. And when the American people own their money supply and operate an honest banking system that is supervised and administered by the U.S. Treasury Department, as it is designed to do, then the American people, as soon as that interest on the money supply goes to pay the cost of government. The interest on the money supply, rather than going to private banksters on Wall Street, the interest on the money supply goes to pay for the government. And I love my fair tax friends, but look, you don't need an income tax. You don't need a fair tax. All you need to do is own the money supply. And as soon as you own the money supply and the people's government administers the money supply, then all of a sudden you have an income stream that is going to pay the cost of government without taxing the people at all. It's no coincidence that in 1913, not only did the income tax come in, but also did the Federal Reserve. The income tax came in first, the Federal Reserve came in second, because they had to have that income stream ready to pay the interest to the private banks. So this is the biggest scam in the history of mankind. There is no way that the American people are going to survive this as long as this private banking system is still in operation. We've got to take back the ownership of our currency. We've got to administer it through our government, the people's government, and when you do that, you will also remove the private incentives for the government to then be doing the work of the corporations rather than the work of the people. That is the answer to the problem. We have got to own our own money supply and administer it ourselves through our own government. That is how you solve the problem, and that, honest to goodness, is the way you restore this country back to its founding roots. Thank you very much.
Yay.